Coach Angelo, welcome to the Business of Strength podcast, man. It's been a long time coming having you on the show, and thank you for being here.
Hey, Dan, thank you so much. Been a fan for a long time. I love what you guys are doing. And like I said before, there's so many podcasts that address how to train. You guys are one of the few that address the business side of how to actually make a dollar being a trainer, being a coach. So I'm super excited for this today.
Yeah, it's awesome. And, before the show, we were talking about, how you've been able to be a strength coach for such a long time in one place at Seton Hall University, and how that's enabled you the ability to kind of, enable you the ability to be an entrepreneur in this space and in plenty of different realms. And I can't wait for the listeners to hear all about that. So, I mean, for the 2 minute pitch on who you are and what you've done, let's bring the listeners up to speed on where you're at and what brought you to this point.
All right, let's go. 2 minutes. I grew up at the Jersey Shore, went to a public high school in the 90s. We had a strength and conditioning coach and a real good weight room for the time, right? So it's super, just kind of in the right place at the right time. That strength coach, Ron DeVito, became a very big influence on my life. From there, I went to University of Delaware and majored in exercise science with a concentration strength and conditioning. And then just kind of did the first 10 years of my career the way most strength coaches do, right? I was a GA at Virginia Tech, first job at NC State, so moving around the country pretty far from New Jersey. 1 year with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then back in 05, the job at Seton Hall opened up. And then, the jobs are very hard to get now. They were probably just as hard 20 years ago. And the chance to come back to Jersey and live where I wanted to live and be a strength coach at a school I grew up a fan of. Like, I had a Seton Hall starter jacket when I was a little kid. That chance isn't going to come up every day. So I had to jump out at it, put as many ducks in a row as I could. Lucky enough to get that job offer. And now it's been 20 years in the same place. But like you said, I think by staying in one place for so long, you can argue your career stagnates, but also argue that once you lock down and figure out how to do that day job, you can become a part of the community and do a bunch of other kind of entrepreneurial things, community outreach things that you can't do if you're jumping jobs every couple of years.
I love that. And what role did you start with at Seton Hall?
Honestly, it's been, I guess, title almost the same thing, right? There's two of us on staff. We're just called strength and conditioning coaches. We had 13 sports, I believe. I had half the department. The other position had half the department. And it just kind of the way our profession goes, that I'm going to say other position, because it's changed so many times in the 20 years I've been there. I've been the one constant. And then now we're up to 3 full-time positions, which we're growing the department slowly but surely. And then we just kind of changed it around every couple of years. So some years I've had sports A, B, and C. Some years I've had sports D, E, and F. But over the time I've been there, I've worked with just about everybody on campus.
And when you got there 20 years ago, in your head, you made mention of something that I think is important. It's important not to gloss over it. You've been in one place for 20 years. I don't know the statistics with, the collegiate world, but I'm sure you are an anomaly. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, what I say on most of these interviews is 20 years in a regular job is a long time. 20 years in a college athletics job is a complete anomaly, like you said, right? But in all fairness, a couple things have played into that, right? By being on the Olympic sports side of things, my position is not tied to a basketball or football coach, right? So those coaches have changed. Like in 20 years, I worked with 35 head sports coaches, right? I did that statistic in my head when I got to end of year 19, which is it's good and bad, right? The bad side of it is you don't have a ton of consistency in what you're doing year to year because things are always changing. But the good side of it is, from the financial stability side of things, my job doesn't change a whole lot. Like if our volleyball coach goes ahead and leaves, I meet the new coaching staff and we find a way to work together, right? And I think if you're tied to more of those financially rewarding sports like football and basketball, when that staff leaves, either they get fired or they move up a level and get a better job. You're either going to have to go with them to that other job that might be across the country if you're lucky enough to get invited to go, or you're looking for another job when the new staff comes in. Now, it's kind of, I think, a lot of things in life, it's big risk, big reward. Men and women that have taken that road may have made way more money than me in any year of their career, but then that might be followed by 2 or 3 years of unemployment or 2 or 3 years of not knowing what the next step is. So my version of the world that I like, that's been the best for me, not saying it's perfect for everybody else, is have a stable, we'll call it a quote unquote day job, right? To be a part of the campus community, be an adjunct professor every semester, teaching classes and being a part of the kind of the stability athletic department. And then when a chance to write a book pops up or a chance to to run the NSA in New Jersey for a 3-year term, or a chance to do some personal training pops up, I could do that around my, we'll call it again, quote unquote, day job or real job.
When you got the job 20 years ago, did you assume that was this your intention, or was this just another stop in the road?
My goal, because I moved so many times in the 10 years leading up to it, right, was to stay at Seton Hall for 4 years. So the freshmen that got there when I got there, see them graduate, and then see what the next step might be. And if I tell you for the last 15 years, I haven't, been looking around. I know what's out there. I follow all the social media sites of jobs that are out there. I've had some offers to do things in the private sector that just weren't the right thing at the right time. And I like Seton Hall. I like working there. I'd love for my daughter, who's 9 now, to go to college there in 9 or 10 years and be able to take care of that financially for her if I'm still working there. But I'm not. I'm also going to complete blinders on, right? It's a job. I could be fired from a job at any minute, and I'm very cognizant of that. And I'm always having my eyes out, my ears out for other opportunities, right? And I think if you have a job in college sports or anything else, and you don't think it could end in a second, you are just incredibly mistaken about the way the world works. The joke I've been making for the last couple of years is Bill Belichick. I'm a Jet fan, so I hate saying this, but Bill Belichick is the greatest football coach of all time. He pretty much got fired, right?
Yeah.
Little Wayne, who ran the music industry for 10 years in the mid 2000s, pretty much got fired from Cash Money Records. If those two guys can lose their job, I can definitely lose my job, right? And I'm big in the podcast world, as you guys probably know. But there's a podcast I really like, and I was listening to it. And the guy was talking about a job and a business, right? And my daughter's in the car with me. I make her listen to all stuff too, even though she's young. And she's in the back seat. She's like, "Dad, what's the difference between a job and a business?" And I'm like, "A job is when you work for somebody else. A business is when you work for yourself." And she goes, "What do you have?" And I go, "Well, at Seton Hall, I have a job, but my speaking engagements, my books, my stand-up comedy career, that's my business." And she goes, "Why do you have a job and a business?" And we're at a red light. I turn around. I'm like, "Hey, listen, little buddy, if somebody decides they don't want me to have my job anymore on a Monday, you still got to eat on Tuesday. And nobody's deciding whether you eat or not except for me." And she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Get it." And I want her to know that from 9.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You brought something up about Belichick getting canned. I mean, he was a Jet for a while. Is that what rubs you the wrong way, or what?
And I know you're a football guy, and I'm not the biggest NFL fan anymore. I'm just kind of too busy to watch as much as I used to. But there's this thing that these guys that play or come through the Jets organization, as soon as they move on, get great at wherever they go, and they had none of that when they were wearing the green and white. And then just getting our brains bashed in for 20 years, and he was on the sidelines with New England was hard, man. But I think too, like, I'm also not. I'm a sports fan. I love sports, but when you see greatness like that, to some extent, you got to just be like, that is something else. That was a hell of a run those guys went on. But like I said before, if jobs are great, and so the idea of financial stability is great. But if people that were that great at their profession could get fired, everybody else is day to day, in my opinion.
No, it's so true. And the thing is, like, even in business, though, um, like owning a gym business, you can get fired from this too, right? You can. It's called going out of business, and
Right.
you have to fight each and every day. We're a business. I mean, Joe, my business partner, started Varsity House in 2006, and things have absolutely matured and things have absolutely changed. But now there's more pressure today than ever before, because the stakes are so much higher,
The
and
other thing in our profession, everybody thinks strength and conditioning growing is a good thing. And when you look at the health of the American population and us affecting more people, it's a great thing that more people are training, more people are taking it seriously, more people are staying active later in life. Younger kids or the families of younger kids are addressing health and physical well-being younger than we ever have before. Those are all good things. But what it also does, it means more people are getting into profession, and there's more competition than ever before, right? So, and one thing, the head of the New Jersey NSCA, the National Strength and Conditioning Association, one problem we have as a profession that I don't think anyone is addressing, when we say the profession is growing, right? That means more colleges and universities are offering majors in exercise science, exercise physiology, kinesiology, strength and conditioning, however you want to call it, right? So the bottom of our pyramid is getting bigger every year because more kids are graduating with degrees to do what guys like me and you do, right? The top of the pyramid is about the same size
Mm.
outside of the private sector like you guys do, right? So if you look at all the college universities and all of the professional sports organizations, there's not that many more strength and conditioning jobs than there were 25 years ago and say the year 1999 of 2000, right? So we keep the bottom of the pyramid is multiplying exponentially. The top of the pyramid is adding positions, not multiplying them, right? So at some point, number one, guys that have been in a long time are trying to outrun these young people that are getting in the field and stay employed. And at the same time, we keep, and I realize I'm a part of the problem being a professor at a university. We keep graduating kids and selling them on the dream of you can make a living as a personal trainer, a coach, whatever nomenclature you want to use, but we're not really guaranteeing there's more jobs at the top of that pyramid. So that's why I think what you guys do at Varsity House is number one, interesting, and number two, incredibly commendable. You're creating jobs for people who want to get in the profession and making high level coaching available to, let's just call it, general population people. And I think that's where our field is growing more because there's not more college and pro jobs than there were when I got in this profession close to 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and one that I really haven't thought of that much because in the private sector, it's really, it really is limitless, right? Like if you are willing to move to an area or take a job and you're willing to foster relationships and get results for 100 clients that are willing to pay $350 a month, like you've got a six-figure earning potential job there for one person, or maybe two,
Yeah.
if you're willing, if there's some price elasticity. But with a pro job, what is there? Four coaches on a football staff at Seton Hall, major Division I university. You guys have two strength coaches in the whole university. That's
Well, we have
crazy.
three, but yeah, it's an insanely small number. And I think one thing our profession probably needs to do better is teach these kids in these undergrad programs or even high school kids that want to get involved, interns when we're lucky enough to have interns working with us and want to learn from us and mentor these kids that yeah, you got to understand what goes on in the squat rack and you got to know how to do your kettlebell movements and however you're going to train, you got to understand that, right? But you also have to understand the profession, right? Understand that when you see a job advertised on just one of the popular job boards, you're competing with 100 people minimum to get the job,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And a lot of times that job, they might already have that earmarked for a former intern, former athlete. By the time it's listed, it might already be awarded to somebody else, and they're listing it because they have to because of HR laws and codes and stuff, right? So I think just the idea of being smart and being aggressive when you're trying to find a job is super important. The way I think you guys do a great job of explaining that if we're going to do marketing and do client retention and figure out where to best spend our advertising dollars, it's got to be aggressive. It can't be passive because when you're being passive, the gym next door is being aggressive and taking your clients.
So, being an adjunct professor, you're able to give people a really honest inside view of what being a strength pro is going to look like. What advice do you give people when they're going through the degree in terms of those summer internships, what jobs they should be looking at, and how to be considered, for a finalist of one of those 100 applications? Like, what advice? I'm 21 years old. I'm a junior. I'm trying to get a job. What are you telling me, Angelo?
And number one, be open to every kind of training out there. Okay, what you did in high school, what you're doing in college. We have a weird profession, right? We can read all the textbooks you want. If you want to argue with them, it's an open argument. But I really believe, and I hate to say this to some extent, an average program with a person that works at it like a lunatic is
Mm-hmm.
more effective than a great program with a person that doesn't work at it like a lunatic, right? So if you have a great body, you're really strong, and you're in college, awesome. But be open to other ways to train and learn from everybody you come across, right? Number two, intern in as many places and as many settings as you possibly can. Being in New Jersey is a great asset because there's 5 or 6 Division I colleges. There's a dozen more Division II and III colleges. You got the Jets, the Giants, all the Philadelphia teams are right down the road. And you have literally more private training facilities from, really small mom and pop personal training studios to big facilities like Varsity House and everything in the middle, right? So what I say, if you're going to be in college 8 semesters and 4 summers, you should do close to 12 internships. You should be looking at everything out there. And then number two is this: learn from the internship, learn from your mentors, right? Take notes, ask questions. All that's important. Maybe more important, build that network from your freshman year. Have as many references as you can and keep in touch with as many people as you can, because at the end of the day, it's a relationship business, right? I always tell people, there's 3 of us on staff at Seton Hall. When you leave your internship, you should have 3 networks of people that you could call on and be like, hey, I'm applying for a job at Louisville. Do you know anybody there? And if I might not know the strength staff, I might know the hitting coach. I might know the volleyball assistant. It's a small world, and just kind of trying to build that network as big as you can, right? I think that's the biggest thing. And then the other thing, I think, use social media in the right way, right? Post your training ideas, post your workouts, post the places you've been, thanking your mentors on LinkedIn and stuff like that. If you're reading books about training, doing book reviews, I think it's a good idea. But let people know that, because they're going to Google you. They're going to go down the rabbit of your social media. And if it's nothing but frat parties and Hoboken and St. Patrick's Day parades, I'm not saying you're not going to get a job, but you're probably going to be a little lower on that list than a person that's cranking out good content related to their career a lot of times. So I hate the old guy, I hate social media mentality, but be smart about social media and use it for an advantage as opposed to a detriment.
100%. And like the thing too that I would have to imagine is, and I tell our coaches this all the time, like you're selling yourself to your clients like all the time. And you have the luxury of having the athletes, they're not paying to train with you, right? So they don't have a choice. They have to train with you. But that doesn't mean they're going to believe in you. That doesn't mean they're going to buy in. That doesn't mean you're going to establish any kind of a relationship. And social media is a tool to build buy-in. Social media, you can post social proof of people that have, started here and ended over here. It could show championships, accreditations, who you know, what you know. And there's a new person landing on your social media page for the first time every single day, like no matter how many followers you have. So that's it's an important note, because I think a lot of people in the college world, they might, and even in this world too, like they're just like, I don't like social media. I focus on my clients. I don't want to take a video. I don't want to take the picture, but you can pay somebody freaking $20 an hour to come snap a couple pictures on your cell phone to get, to get media to post.
Yeah, the joke I always make is people today that don't like social media 1,000 years ago, there were people that didn't like books. Like, why do you need a book? Just carve it in stone. That's just as good. No, it's
Right.
not. Books are better.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we live in a social media era, so figure that out, right? And
Right.
one thing I've learned the last couple of years that I think with the staff you have at the varsity house, you probably believe in this already, but I'll say this to any kind of experienced coaches are, the mentor-mentee relationship goes both ways, right? So I've gotten a lot from my interns over the years, because they've trained different ways, they've played different sports. I've learned things from people that were brand new to the field when I was in year 25, right? So you got to be open to that if you're in our position, right? But the other thing is this. So one thing I tell coaches to do, I figured this out probably 10 years ago. I was using the app GroupMe. I probably moved on to WhatsApp or whatever since then. But I keep all my interns that stayed in the profession in a group online, probably up to about 75 people right now.
I love
And
that.
when I release a project, I put it in. When I see a job listed, I put it in. Someone's applying for a job or wants to open a gym, they put that in there, right? So then I didn't start this idea of getting anything out of it for myself. I wanted to give it back to my interns over the years. But every time I put a book out in the last couple of years, I've let them know, and they've got that out to their social media, right? So I think that's a key too. That if you're a mentor, you can also use that relationship with young people to help yourself down the line as well. Can I shout out 2 of my former interns that
Of
you know?
course. Of
Because they've
course.
been great on these last 2 projects for me. Number one, Connor Abreu down at TNL, they're Trenton. One of my all-time favorite interns. We still talk probably once every 2 weeks. I believe he won an award from you guys. I'm sure that was well
Gym of the
deserved.
year.
And then
Yeah.
Jamie Pasquin, man,
Yep.
when he was working in Monmouth and I live at the Jersey Shore, we got to be friends. And then I was super happy for him when he was out in Cleveland. So he was doing a great job with that G League team. But I'm super happy he's back in Jersey now. We've connected a few times. But that's just kind of a cool thing that these are 2 kids that Jamie never interned me. We just got to be friends. Connor was one of the best interns we ever had at Seton Hall. And we've gotten to become friends and work together. And they've both been great about promoting my books and other projects.
The irony is it's the reason why you and I are on this call right now.
Yeah, no question.
You
Um,
know, you talk about network. It's that's what bridged the gap. You know, to make the connection and create the relationship, and now here we are. So, really cool stuff. Were you going to say something else about that?
no, that's it, man. There's two good guys that we know in common, and in my opinion, two of the best young guys in our field.
Yeah, they're both kicking ass. Obviously, Jamie's here. I'm in the office right now. He's on the floor kicking ass. And Connor, I speak to every week. Connor's actually one of the founding members of the Business of Strength group. He took a chance on us 7 years ago, and we've been working together ever since. He's really running a fantastic shop at TNL in Hamilton, New Jersey. So, Angelo, I'm hearing this. It's Dan. I'm Dan the junior at Seton Hall. I think I want to get into the field, and I'm doing all the internships. And I'm not sure if this is going to be a career that's going to create sustainability for my future self. I'm 35 years old. I want to have a family. I don't want to move around a million times. I don't know what the job looks like on the day to day. Can you take us through what an actual day or calendar, not a calendar year, but I know right now we're in the middle of winter break. You do have some downtime, but when you don't, when semester's in, what does a typical day look like? And when you're off, how are you feeding the beast of your business, being a dad, being a husband, and also a comedian?
Yeah, man. So my typical day at Seton Hall starts right about 6 o'clock. So the new NCAA rule, 6 a.m. is the first time you can do anything. So we start at 6. Hey, let's take a fall day because those are kind of my busier days. And we'll have a baseball group in at 6. We'll have a baseball group at 7. Usually bring in the new the we used to call them freshmen. Now the transfer portal are just new guys. It's a lot of older guys that are new to our program. So bring them in at 6, and we'll do our weight room stuff at 6. At 7, we'll bring in our returning position players. At
Hmm.
8 o'clock, we might have softball depending on the day. At 9 o'clock, we'll probably have some cross country and maybe a basketball group depending on what they got going on that day. And then mid morning, about 10 o'clock, it normally slows down because most of our student athletes go to class, right? So I'll get a workout in, I'll have an in service with my interns, and I teach a class every day at 11. So that's kind of my 10 to 2 every day, right? And then from 2 to 5 or 6, the teams that practice in the morning will lift in the afternoon. So it might be soccer, it might be swimmers, it might be cross country, depending on the time of the year. And then we kind of wrap up the day at 5 or 6, unless we have like a late basketball practice or something like that. That'll kind of be my day, right? The way I look at it, I tell young people all the time, is strength and conditioning on the college level, and I think to some extent on the private sector, you have a long day, but you have pockets off in that day, right? You might have a client at 6, a client at 7, and then a client at 9. So from 8 to 9, you can make the decision. You can go be productive, or you can scroll through your fantasy football lineup for an hour, right? Those are two things you can do. So what I always say to people is, if I'm out of my house, I want to monetize every hour of my time that I possibly can. So I have it, the day before I think about, all right, I got an hour between swimming and women's basketball lifting. I'm going to work on a chapter of my next book. I'm going to try to secure another speaking engagement. I'm going to market this podcast I was on last week, whatever it might be. And the one thing I found to be super valuable, as somebody who does a lot of things like you just alluded to, I go to my office every day at 6 a.m. Some days we have a team at 6. Some days the first team's at 7. Some days the first team's at 8. But every day I go in there at 6, and if there's no team coming in, I leave the weight room door locked and I work on my next project, whatever that's going to be. It might be writing a book, it might be editing a book, it might be trying to secure podcast appearances, depending on the time of the year. But one thing I would say for strength coaches in this world, two things. Number one, we periodize our training, periodize your life, right? So, like for me, December is a super slow month of my day job. So I really push whatever project I want to do next year. So December of 23, I did the entire rough draft of the next 4 years between 6 and 8 a.m. in those 4 weeks in December, right?
Wow.
Next year I'll have another goal for that time of the year. And then I knew I couldn't work on the book really January, February, March, and April. My schedule's too crazy. Then May, it's quiet again. So now May, I can put another 2 hours in a day and edit or do the photo shoot or whatever it might be. But I think that's one thing that if you stay at a job long enough, you realize when those pockets are and the ebb and the flow of the year. then you can periodize your training first of all, and your kind of workflow and your side hustles around that, right? The other thing I say, strength coach all the time, it's what I call the 1 hour. And what I believe in is this: if you're going to be a strength coach at a college or university or even a high school, you need 1 hour a day to train. You got to be a good example. You got to try what you're asking people to do. You got to walk the talk. And then number two, you need 1 hour a day to generate income that's not your main job, whatever that means for you. I think if you do those two things every day for 1 hour each, you'll be effective in this profession. If you don't, you will be out of shape and a bad example and have no idea what you're asking other people to do, which I think makes you incompetent in our profession. And number two, you will eventually lose your job and have to go on public assistance because there's no way you're going to be able to eat and live and pay your bills with nothing else going on other than a day job. So I think you got to adhere to that 1 hour rule, train yourself, be a good example, know what you're asking other people to do, and then have another hour a day dedicated to income generation other than the check you're guaranteed, right? It's the old example that if you feed it, animals in the zoo get fat, they get lazy, they don't know how to kill anymore, and then they go out in the wild and they get killed right away, right? So I realized by taking the day job, I'm in the cage. I'm a caged animal. I understand that, but I'm doing push-ups and pull-ups and training in that cell because if that cell door opens, I'm out in the wild again.
Yeah, I love that. I love that example. Um, so back to the day to day, because I think a lot of times people like um, I don't know, they think, oh, I'm going to be the strength coach at Seton Hall. I'm going to work with one of the best baseball teams in the country, and that's all I'm going to do. It's clear that that's not all that you're doing. Does the typical day start at 6 no matter what and end at 6 pretty much no matter what, 5 days a week?
Yeah, you during the heat of both semesters, yes, right? The summer's a little bit easier, winter break a little bit easier, and I guess the one of the thing that's good and bad about a university job is you really have no control of your schedule yourself, right? So there's days that again in the summer it's really just the basketball kids on campus. So
Hmm.
we'll train from like 9 to 12, a couple groups of basketball, and then the afternoon is super quiet, right? But then during the school year, we'll start at basketball guys might be early, and then we have swimming, cross country, volleyball, and soccer all afternoon, and that schedule is totally dictated by somebody else. What I will, and then say if we had football, which our summers would be insane, right? We
Yeah.
had conditioning in the morning, lifting, whatever it might be, right? Not being a football school, that's not an issue where but then our August is pretty nuts because instead of just going to football practice, we got volleyball, both soccer, and cross country doing preseason training, getting ready for their fall. And I think that's the part of the game is just you got to go with the ebb and the flow of the year, and your schedule is determined by other people. But you got to find a way to make that work for you.
And how about weekends? Are you required to go to games and things like that?
I am not required to go to any games anymore. It's not part of my job description right now. I go to as many as I can because I think if you're going to be a part of that campus community, people got to see you and you got to be visible, right? I know you guys talk on your podcast a lot about you go to start your marketing, going to 50 games each, trying to pull kids in, and that's it. And I think too, if you're going to be a good practitioner in a field, you got to know the demands of the game, right? That's number one. But number two, if you're always screaming at a kid in the weight room, but never clapping for them when they score and never giving them a
Hmm.
high five when they walk off the court, how long are they really going to respect you, right? So I think you got to be a part of if it's in my case, the college community. For you guys, it might be the high school community. But I try to go to as many things as I possibly can.
No, I love that. How has your philosophy around strength and conditioning changed? I mean, you talked about learning from the interns and and having that white belt mentality, which makes things interesting. But how has your approach to coaching a student athlete changed from 20 years ago till now?
The biggest thing that I've seen change in a positive way, because everybody gets that question and wants to go super, and people are soft. Nobody, fine, move on from that. Here's my idea that actually matters. One thing we're doing better now than we were 20 years ago is looking holistically at athletes as people, right? We used to get kids in the weight room and not care what practice was about, what they ate or drank. If they were, we got to get after it right now. And there's probably a time for that, right? But now I think we do a much better job, or at least I do, meeting with head coaches often, sometimes every couple of days What are we doing in practice? How hard is this practice going to be? And then looking at nutrition, looking at hydration, looking at, are we squatted 225. We used to want to have a party if the kid couldn't do 2 plates, but now we're being a little bit smarter. We're looking at some VBT stuff. Are we moving the bar at a good velocity? Are we doing things properly? And if not, are there other markers to look at other than just weight on the bar? I think that's important. We all got to get big and strong. We all love training, but there's some other things that matter. And if these kids aren't powerlifters or Olympic weightlifters, are some of those other factors maybe even more important. So I think we got a little bit better. We used to be super focused on the barbell and the weight room, and now I think we're a little bit better looking at holistically what's going on in these kids' lives. The other thing, probably the biggest thing I've seen in the last 10 years is much more emphasis on nutrition and hydration, much more emphasis on sleep, and then the last probably 5 years is mental health and just how hard being a college athlete is, or being really any athlete is. And the kid might be in 8th grade, and from the personal trainer's perspective, everything's easy, right? Mom and dad drive you to the gym, they pay for the gym, they buy you workout clothes. When you go to school, what do you have to worry about? But inside that young man or woman, there's a million things we don't see, right? So I think we're doing a little bit better job on that. And that was kind of the idea for the next 4 years. So because what I've seen for 20 years now is everybody comes to campus unprepared. From McDonald's All-Americans to walk-on cross-country runners, kids are just not ready to come to campus. And I got half the book is how to get physically ready in the 12 weeks leading up to your freshman year. But then the other half of the book is all the other things you have to deal with, right? Now you lived in a house with your family. Now you live in a room with a kid you just met. The dining hall is different. The gear is different. The coaches are different. And just we've seen where we're finally acknowledging that's a hard mental transition for people. And I just want myself in the book to be a part of that and making that a little bit better for people.
I love that. How has you talk about the next 4 years for people? We're not nearly as affected by it as much as I'm sure you are. Can you speak to the NIL and how that's changed the landscape of college sports? I don't know if you're feeling it as much as a strength coach, but I know I know there's implications as it pertains to recruiting. Has that changed anything for you guys?
It's changed the game more than any other thing that's ever changed, if that makes sense, right?
Hmm.
So the two things that hit, well, I guess you look at college sports was relatively stagnant from the 1950s to about 2020, right? 2020, COVID shut everything down. And then we came back in a completely different world than we were before because of NIL and the transfer portal, right? So the biggest thing we've had is this. It was just so your listeners understand two things. Free transfer portal, if you were at, let's say, Seton Hall and want to transfer to any other school and stay in Division One, you got to sit out a year. So that's a peak year of your athletic career. You can't play anywhere, and then you can play. So what that meant was if the coach changed, if the philosophy changed, if you just didn't want to go to that college, you lost a year, right? Now, at any given time, you can put your name in the transfer portal and you could be at Seton Hall on Monday, and you could theoretically be suited up for Rutgers on Tuesday, depending on the time of the year and when you decide to make the change and stuff like that.
That's just total bullshit. I mean, it's crazy.
It is crazy. It's a bizarre world. I will say that I view it like this. For 70 years, institutions and the coaching staffs had way too much power, right?
Yes.
Now it's swung too far the other way, right?
Yep.
The example I always give, back in the day, if you were a 7-foot center and a coach came in and wanted to run and gun, you had you couldn't leave. You just had to sit on the bench till your eligibility ran out, right? But now the idea of I'm the second string point guard, the first string guy is pretty good. Let me get the hell out of here when I can. I think that's a mistake too, right? And the thing I keep preaching to, I do a lot of talks at high schools, and I think kids and their parents have to understand we got to think long term, okay? And what I mean by that is if you're a baseball player and you want to be a dentist when you're 30 and you're in a bio program that puts a lot of kids in dental school, you should probably ride that out and become a dentist.
Right.
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 But, however, if you're a men's basketball player or you're a football player and you're making a scholarship to go to school A and school B called and said, we'll give you $500,000, you got to go get the $500,000. You have
You got to go. You got to get it.
And I think, and that's the numbers we're dealing with now. So the NIL, the other side of the coin is kids are getting paid to play. And my argument is, I think in certain sports, it makes perfect sense. And what I always say is I believe it was 17 or 18, we had a really good basketball team at Seton Hall. We had 3 seniors they were great players. They were great guys. I had a great relationship with them. But we marketed them at a level that was probably unfair to them. Like they were on billboards on the Parkway, they were on buses all around North Jersey, and I used to joke around with them all the time. Every time I pull up next to you three guys at a bus, I have two questions. One, how are you guys not getting paid for this? And number two, who photoshopped those pictures? Because none of you were that handsome in real life. If you're going to fill an arena and you're going to sell jerseys and beer and food and tickets, you probably deserve a piece of that action. I think that's fair, right?
I do too. I 100% do. The thing that I see is, I was a program guy. I went to URI as a freaking preferred walk-on, earned my keep, earned the scholarship, earned a spot, and that's I probably reached to be there, honestly. But there was something to that. There was something to just going and staying and creating, friendships. And we talked about this quote before the show. My greatest ability there was my dependability there. And I just hung around long enough to crack the lineup.
Yeah,
And I don't know if that's happening enough.
it's not. And I think the idea of being able to move around is theoretically a good idea if you're not looking at college as an educational experience, right? If we're going to look at college as 4 formative years of your life that
Cash grab.
adult, there should probably be some more stick to itiveness ingrained in that, right? If it's just a cash grab now for everybody, we have to change the way we look at college in general. I don't know. We're in the middle of this. It's the Wild West right now. I don't know what the next step is. And one thing you alluded earlier to Seton Hall being one of the best baseball programs in the country, right? And I am so lucky to have been around that for as long as I have. The coaches are great, but I'm going to explain to you where this is going in a second. Rob Shepard is our baseball coach. He's been a baseball coach for 25 years. I've been with him as a strength coach for 20 years, right? So we have a great working relationship. Most of the assistants are from the program. They were players that we pull up as assistants, and his dad was the head coach about 30 years before him. So the Shepard family has run Seton Hall baseball for like 50 years. Now, what that creates is an environment where the program is a fraternity in the good sense of the word. And what that means is when you graduate as a Seton Hall baseball alumni player and you apply for a job with a guy that played baseball 20 years before you, your resume might get to the top of the pile, right? Mm-hmm. And where I've seen, I didn't play at Seton Hall. I just been a strength coach for a very long time. When I put a book out, our baseball guys, our alumni are so supportive online. It's all over their LinkedIn, all over Instagram. Two of them have podcasts that I was on earlier this year on this run for the next 4 years. So being a part of that fraternity, kind of like you alluded to at URI, and putting your time in and working your way up, number one, it gives you a badge of honor, and number two, it gives you a network when you graduate of people you can call for a job, call for a reference, call and use as a mentor. What do I do in the situations around my family, right? But that's so rare now because, like I said, Coach Shepard's been with us for 20 years and has built this family and this fraternity of people that help each other, and I'm lucky to be a part of it. But we live in a world where college coaches don't keep jobs for 20 years, right? They either are successful and bounce to the next higher job, or they fail and get fired, and the program is not around for, and then somebody else comes in every 3 to 5 years, right? So I realize what you're saying, what I have at Seton Hall baseball, and it sounds like what you had at URI football was awesome. And in some ways, that's the way college sports should be. Unfortunately, it's just so few and far between. And I think in the new era we're in now, it's going to be fewer and even further in between. Do you agree?
I do agree. I would like to see it change. Look, players should be getting paid. There's no question about it. I just would like to see there be some level of like a contract, where it's just like, hey, like it's because I think for a player standpoint too, you're seeing now all these lawsuits that are hitting of players not getting paid what they're promised and this and that. And it just opens the door for some shady cats to make make some money on people that probably don't know what they're doing.
Well, I think, you know what, I think there's always been an element of that in college because you're taking young people that don't have a lot of life experience and potentially no one in their family's ever done well enough financially to worry about how to pay taxes. How do you make an LLC? How do you shield yourself? The whole business. They have no one that they can even call on for that, right? So they're automatically susceptible to shysters, for lack of a better term, right? Now, on top of that, you add in the idea of the NIL money and the transfer portal is so new. The joke I keep making is being an athletic director right now is like being a GM in the NFL if the NFL started yesterday, and they keep changing the rule book every couple days. So it's like, I think athletic departments have a lot to be desired, but that job has been so hard in the last couple of years. And then the idea that you can be an agent or an advisor or manager for a young player and have any idea how to navigate this, you're really lying, because there's
Yeah.
no playbook yet. If I was a Division I prospective student athlete right now, and I'm going to say junior in high school, and I got Gatorade's got a check for me, Reebok's got a check for me because they're jumping in the game pretty heavy right now with the NIL stuff, and they're going to direct me where to go. If anybody came to me and told me they can, without a doubt, advise me in the right direction, they're lying, because the right direction has not been found out yet, right? Now, what I would respect is someone saying, look, I'm a lawyer. I have some ideas of how this is going to go. I think we make money.
Contracts. Yeah.
I can make some money together. Let's see. I'll respect that all day. But if you tell me you know what you're doing right now, nobody knows what they're doing right now. We're going to keep it
Right.
real.
So you as a strength coach, you have players that that are hitting the weight room that are getting paid. Has it changed the look, there's certain guys that and certain student athletes that just don't love the weight room. They love their sport, but the weight room's a chore. What are some challenges that you've faced with players now getting paid? Like, how have the excuses changed? Are there coaches that just come along and just say, like, hey, coach, like Angelo, like, this guy Dan, like, don't bother him. He's, is that happening?
It hasn't happened yet. I think it will. And if I'm going to make a prognostication about the future, the first thing they're going to negotiate out is summer school. They hate being there for the summer, right? And if we're not caring about moving towards a degree anymore, which, let's be real, a lot of them, it doesn't matter, because you're going to go to 4 colleges in 4 years and not get a degree. They're not going to come in the summer anymore. We haven't seen that yet, but I think it's only a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
But once we get there, they're pretty bought in, at least where I am. I can't speak for anybody else, but I haven't seen anybody. Wait, there's two things, right? You got a kid making a lot of money saying, you paid me to play basketball, not lift. I'm not coming to the weight room today. The other option is you got a kid making a lot less money and saying, like, why am I being asked to work the same as the guy making 10 times as much money as me? Which I think, if you're an employee, that's a somewhat fair argument, which we haven't had to deal with yet, but we really might. But yeah, man, things are changing fast and furious for us.
So advice, we've done a lot of advice for the aspiring strength coach. What advice would you have for the aspiring athlete to be able to stick out, like, as a recruit? And what are the coaches talking about as it pertains to high school recruiting? Because that's another element too. Transfer portal is almost like shelving a senior in high school. If I'm a senior in high school or junior in high school, like, what are some things that I can do to still be a recruited high school athlete at a place like Seton Hall?
Okay, number one, start taking care of your body as early as you can, and not just a cliche. It's a powerful. Here's what I mean by that is, you're going to be 17 or 18 years old, and in the transfer portal, it's a senior in high school that's, let's say, 18, and a coach could take you or a 23-year-old senior in college that's going for their grad year, and that's a grown man or woman. You're a boy or girl if you're 17 or 18, right? So get as big and as strong and as fast as you possibly can, so that when they look at that video, they're not looking at a boy or a girl. You look like a man or woman, right? And then your upside will be bigger because you have more years to grow into your role. But if you're just really undersized, really out of shape, always injured, and you're 17 or 18, they're going to project it out to you being even a worse version of that at 22 if you stay for all 4 years, right? So start training early, take it serious early, and realize that you're not just being recruited against all the other seniors in your area. It's you and every other senior and college kid in the area because of the transfer portal, right? The other thing I think that will kind of separate, and I put this in a book, if you start getting some calls and emails from coaches or getting followed on social media, hit them with informed questions, right? Do we have a conditioning test? What are the key things we do in the weight room? How do I be ready for the first day? Because so many of our freshmen come to campus just so chronically unprepared. If you get there and you stand out by being prepared and knowing what to expect, you're already above all the other new kids, right? And the other thing, and this is, it's a little controversial of a take, but I always stand by it. When you're a senior in high school going to freshman year in college, if you got to pick between strength or conditioning, for some reason you can't do both, hit the conditioning hard. And here's why I say this, right? When you walk in a college weight room and there's music blaring and there's all this plates clanging and banging, there's all kind of stuff going on, and you don't know every lift or you need a spot or special instruction, that's why the strength staff is there. That's not going to upset anybody, right? If you go to conditioning or you go to practice and you're always the last person to finish a drill, you're doubled over every garbage can, you're already earmarked as a liability, put a bullseye on your back, right? So I think ideally you're doing both, but if you got to pick, be in shape, be the guy girl that could run all day, and then we can learn the weight room as you go through that first semester, right? But I think the idea, you know how strong you are, if you can't finish a practice, your dependability is basically zero. So I think if you got to pick, go with conditioning and then deal with strength when you get there if you have to.
Failing a conditioning test your first day as a freshman is just it's a bad look.
Yeah, it is, man. And what I say to people all the time is contact the strength coach, find out what, if you have a conditioning test, find out what it is, right? And then do an honest assessment. Let's say, for example, your conditioning test is a 6 minute mile on September 1st. If on June 1st it takes you 9 minutes to run a mile, well, you got 3 months to figure this out, right? And then do I do speed intervals? Do I whatever you got to do? But if and I the one part of our profession, the one guy or girl I can't stand is the strength coach that doesn't respond to incoming recruits' emails or calls. What I really believe is you're going to give us 4 years of your life. I got to give you a call or email, especially if you took the initiative to do it. And then I think what we're doing and what you guys are doing becomes powerful is can we work together, right? If you've been training a kid through his or her, say, sophomore, junior, senior in high school, and then they're coming to Seton Hall, well, let's talk when they sign the NLI or the contract, as we're calling it now, and figure out how we can get together. And I'll be honest, some of the best private sector friends I've made in New Jersey in the last 10, 15 years are men and women that did that, right?
Mhm.
Somebody hit me up, hey, we got a swimmer that goes to Christian Brothers Academy now. He's coming to Seton Hall. What kind of stuff you guys doing up there? And then we meet up, we talk shop, we train, and 9 out of 10 times that man or woman shows up ready to go. And I made a new friend, a new connection in the industry, and so is the person on the other end of that call. So I think if you're a private sector trainer, coach, whatever word you want to use, reach out to the places your student athletes are going and make those connections and learn from each other and use each other as career network points of contact.
No, it's great advice. So you've been in the game now for 25 years, is that correct?
Just about, yeah.
25 years. What are some things that just stick out as like some of your most memorable moments as a coach?
All right, man. I'm going to give you. There's, we won over the year. When you stay in a place in 20 years, even if the place is a train wreck, you have some conference championships, some NCAA tournament. Right, it just happens by the math of it works out. You know what I mean? Like eventually, you get a couple good kids together and you go on some things. So I'd say in 2011, baseball won the Big East championship with a team of just like the best guys, just the coolest group of guys to be around. Ross Stone touch now, 15 years later. One of those guys, an assistant on our team, so I talk to him every day. That was really fun to be around. We've got a couple good basketball groups over the years. And I think the one thing I'm kind of doing now, kind of giving back to the profession, I've been the New Jersey state director of the NACA for the last 3 years, getting able to put on our state conferences and giving people chances to speak for the first time is kind of cool, right? I think that's a good role for somebody like me. That's like connecting people, like putting on live events. But I think the best thing about the weight room is that you could be it's hard to pull out individual great days or workouts because you have so many opportunities to have great things happen, right? Every day somebody hits a PR. Every day somebody does something he or she couldn't do before. And then there's just the relationships you build over 20 years, right? Just seeing people every day or every other day for so long. It's a weird thing where like it's hard to pull out the highlights because so much what we do could be called a highlight.
Yeah, and we're able to really turn the business of strength. We talk about turning passion into profession. Like you and I, you enjoy being in the weight room. It's easy to tell you enjoy connection and communication. That's coaching, right? Like you enjoy sports. Like you're getting paid to do what you love to do, and now you have all these. Literally, there's PRs every day happening in the gym in some capacity. You're changing people's lives in that weight room every single day, and now you're writing about it. I want to ask, just selfishly, because publishing at the level that you are now is an aspiration of mine. How are you pulling the, really compartmentalizing the inspiration that you see, and really, like, you're writing about memorable moments. How are you figuring out the title and how to start? Are you self-publishing? Like, bring us up to speed on some of that.
Okay, so a couple things. I've done two books at this point related to our profession. One I did traditionally with one of the biggest publishers in the world. I'll talk about that in a second. This new one, I made a decision to self-publish. I'll talk about why, because I think a lot of people want to know how that works, right? The
Yeah.
one advice I give to authors, there's never been more we'll call it fitness books, right? If you walk into Barnes and Noble, it's one of the biggest sections. If you go on Amazon, it just goes forever, right? So what I did and what I advise other people to do is figure out the demographic that's not being addressed and address that demographic. So about 5 years ago, I wrote and published Finish Strong, Resistance Training for Endurance Athlete with a co-author, Dr. RJ Borgers. And the idea was this. We were two guys, we were coming close to 40 years old, and we were running, I was running marathons, he was doing triathlons, and we were lifting together, right? And we realized in our world, we were still getting better at the marathons and the triathlons as we were getting older, and we weren't getting injured like a lot of our peers were. So we realized a lot of it is we lifted weights in ways a lot of people in those endurance sports were not doing at the time, right? So the joke I always make is I was going out for runs with people that would run 20 miles in freezing temperatures and sleet outside and not bat an eye, but they were terrified at the sight of a lap pull down machine, right? So, and we realized there's a correlation, right? If you're going to be strong and structurally sound and get better at your endurance events, the weight room is a big part of that. So we sold that book to Bloomsbury Publishing, which is over in England, one of the biggest publishers in the world, and had a really good run with them. Right, it was really cool. And we sold a decent amount of books, did a lot of interviews for it. It was really fun. Right, a couple years go by, that book kind of trails off. It kind of the way books do. And then Dr. Borgers had moved to another position, didn't have the time or energy to devote to another book. I was ready to go again in 2023. Right, so I went to my publisher. I tried to sell the idea to them. Being European based, they don't have college athletics the way we do. They just said, no, we can't sell this. So if you want to take it somewhere else, take it anywhere else you want. We can't do this for you. So I pitched it to every publisher you can imagine, right? Just got no after no after no. The idea being that college kids don't buy books, right? My argument is if you don't publish a book for somebody, how do you know if they're going to buy it or not? And then eventually I got to human kinetics, right? I think there's a pretty cool entrepreneurial story in here that human kinetics, they read my proposal. They're like, look, we don't think this project has legs, but we liked your last book. Do you want to freelance edit some projects for us for, not per diem, but per project? We'll pay you per project, right? So for all of 2023, I did their projects. I kind of ghost wrote, ghost edited, did their projects and got checks from them all year doing that. And then at the end of 2023, I kind of shut that down. I really locked in on the rough draft of the next 4 years. And then early 2024, I realized no publisher wanted this, but I took all of the money I made from Human Kinetics and used that to self-publish the book, right? So I think where I think that's kind of like a hustle a lot of people in our world don't see is if you think about it, Human Kinetics right now is paying me to put a book on the shelf that competes with their products. I don't know if too many people have ever done that and kind of turned the game on its head like that, but I'm kind of proud of that, right? And then on the self-publishing side of things, I got to learn how to I got an outside editor, but I got to learn how to format a book and do a book cover and all those things all by myself. And I'll be honest, man, I don't think unless I got just an incredible advance from a traditional publisher, I would go back to working with anybody again. I think I would keep it in-house and do it by myself. Just because financially it's not a lot more rewarding. And then just the kind of person I am that reaches out to podcasts and interviews and local media. I think I can market it myself pretty good. So right now I'm super happy going the indie route.
So if you don't, you could elaborate as much as you want, but just this is the business
Yeah.
of strength from a financial standpoint. What's been more beneficial for you, the being working with a big publishing house or self-publishing?
As a person who has, and I'm not trying to puff my chest out here, but a little bit of a name in our profession, right?
Yep.
And an insane amount of hustle as far as what I will approach people to do with them. Self-publishing is way more lucrative for me, right? If you want to just sit back, have someone do the work for you, have them decide how many books you sell, what your percentages are, that's probably better for you. So yeah, real quick, so people know the way a traditional publishing deal works is the publisher pretty much buys your idea, right? They give you an advance. They do all the editing. They do the cover design. They do the layout and formatting. They put it in stores on Amazon or else you're going to sell it. And then once you sell enough books to pay your advance back, then you start making a small percentage of your cover price, which is usually about 20%. And in my case, I had a co-author, so we were making 10% of the cover price each. It was a $20 book. It was $2 each, right? But
Right.
with a big publisher, you're all over the world. They're helping you get on shows and stuff like that. So it's and you get to learn how to format a book and those kind of things on their dime, which I think is good, right? On a self-published book, literally anyone could create an account on Amazon, and there's a huge variance on quality because there's some out there that are just terrible and some that are really good. But if you want to put the time in and edit and design a cover and be smart about it and kind of lay it out, you can make a really top quality book yourself and keep in, say it's a $20 cover price, you might be able to pocket $12 or $13 each because your only other partner is Amazon, right?
Right.
But so it's a much if you I don't say if you know what you're doing, but if you're aggressive enough, that's a much better split than 10%, keeping 65, 70%.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's great. So you mentioned writing another project and being part of the NSCA and being part of speaker circuit and still having your day job. What does 2025 look for you like, Angelo? Like
My
what's coming next?
so right now I'm going to put another book way on the back burner. I want to take
Okay.
another. This book came out November 1st, so it's only been out for 2 months. I want to keep pushing through that as far as I can. My goal was 50 interviews. So right now I'm at number 28. I'm going to try to get another 22 of those before I not give up or move on to the next project. And then I guess our next thing NSCA wise, putting together the next state clinic. We're going
Yep.
to try to have you guys be a real big part of that, which I'm super excited
Yeah,
about.
we're pumped about it.
And then because one thing I'm always proud of my NSA membership and the volunteer work I do with them, but I think they do a real good job on the research side of things, the training side of things, not a real good job on the business side. So one thing I want to bring in, even though I'm by no means an expert on how to make a living as a strength coach, I want to bring in as many experts in that world as I can and have you guys talk to young coaches and be like, it's great that you love to lift. It's great you love to train. Here's how you sell a membership. Here's an offer on your website, whatever it might be. So I'm going to be a part of that. And then I think that really might be it for 25, man. Just kind of run through some of this book as best I can and then put together the best NSA events I possibly can. And then hopefully a good year for Seton Hall Spring Sports. We'll see how that goes.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Well, we want to get the you're gonna post up the link for the book in the show notes. And where else can people find you, Coach?
So it's easy. The books are under my name on Amazon. Both of those are Angelo Gingerelli on Amazon. On Instagram, I'm Mr. Fifth Round, MR, the number 5, THRUND. And then email still works, man. I'm a little old school on that. So it's angelo.gingerelli@gmail.com. And any questions you have, I'll answer as best I can.
Awesome. Angelo, thank you so much for being on the Business Strength podcast.
Dan, this is awesome, man. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.